They are the most famous three letters in American law enforcement, and almost nobody can tell you what they actually carry. A pistol built to the Bureau's own specification sheet, 17 contract pages long. A submachine gun chambered in a cartridge that exists because of a single gunfight. A shotgun that is used less like a weapon and more like a key. And behind a fence at Quantico, a hostage rescue unit armed closer to Delta Force than to any police department on Earth. This is every weapon the FBI actually uses, from the pistol on an agent's hip to the rifles watching over American cities from 400 meters away. Most people know the FBI from the windbreakers, agents walking evidence out of a building with 3 yellow letters across their backs. The real organization is bigger than the image. Founded in 1908, the Bureau today runs around 38,000 people, 56 field offices, and a mission that stretches from counterterrorism and espionage to cybercrime and kidnapping. And here is the detail that surprises people. For most of its history, the FBI was not really a gunfighting outfit at all. Agents were accountants, lawyers, and investigators. Men who qualified with a revolver a few times a year and fully expected to close their careers without ever drawing it. That changed on one street in Miami. And to understand every weapon in this video, you have to understand what happened there first. The arsenal you are about to see is organized the way the Bureau itself is organized, in 3 tiers. At the bottom, the everyday sidearm carried by every special agent in the country, from Manhattan bank fraud squads to the border offices of Texas. Above that, the SWAT teams, because every one of those 56 field offices keeps its own, staffed by agents who train for the day a search warrant turns into a war. And at the top, based at Quantico and held at readiness around the clock, the hostage rescue team, the FBI's only full-time tactical unit, built to a national mission standard and measured quite deliberately against the finest special operations forces in the world. 3 tiers. One rule connects them all. Every gun on this list was chosen, or in some cases, literally invented, because of lessons written in blood. So we start with the lesson that started everything. April 11th, 1986. Dade County, Florida. The most studied gunfight in the history of American law enforcement. 8 FBI agents forced 2 heavily armed bank robbers off the road in a quiet residential neighborhood south of Miami. What followed lasted less than 5 minutes, and it has been dissected round by round ever since. The agents went into that fight with 6-shot revolvers and early 9mm pistols. One of their very first rounds struck the lead gunman, a hit that, on paper, should have ended the fight within moments. It did not. The wound was ultimately fatal, but not immediately. And in the gap between those 2 words, he kept fighting for 4 more minutes, long enough to kill 2 agents and wound 5 others, while the survivors struggled to reload revolvers under fire against a man with a semi-automatic rifle. When the Bureau studied that gunfight, the conclusion was as brutal as it was simple. Their bullets had failed to stop a determined attacker fast enough. Their agents had been outgunned on an American street in broad daylight by 2 men. And the FBI decided that would never be allowed to happen again. What came next reshaped the entire American handgun industry, twice. The Bureau went hunting for stopping power, and it found it in a cartridge most shooters had barely heard of, the 10mm auto. A long, fast, heavy round, so potent that the submachine gun you will meet later in this video had to be purpose-built just to contain it. The FBI adopted it, issued it, and almost immediately discovered the problem. Full-power 10mm was simply too much cartridge for the average agent to shoot quickly and accurately under stress. Recoils slowed follow-up shots, and follow-up shots were the entire lesson of Miami. So the Bureau ordered a reduced load, same bullet, less powder, and then Smith & Wesson's engineers looked at that shortened recipe and realized something. If the FBI only needed that much performance, the whole cartridge could be made shorter, and fit into a smaller pistol. In 1990, the .40 caliber Smith & Wesson was born, a cartridge invented, in effect, by an FBI memo. For the next 25 years, it armed the majority of police officers in the United States. One gunfight in Miami had redrawn the holster of an entire nation. And then the science moved again. By the mid-2010s, modern 9mm ammunition had closed the performance gap. New bullet designs delivered what the .40 promised, with less recoil, less wear, and more rounds in the magazine. The Bureau ran the numbers, published the findings, and in 2016 went back to where it had started, but this time on its own terms. Today, the pistol on an FBI agent's hip is the Glock 19M. The M stands for modified. At a glance, it is an ordinary compact Glock. In the contract paperwork, it is anything but: a retuned trigger, refined sights, an ambidextrous slide stop, a flared magazine well, a grip texture specified for gloved hands. The Bureau that once qualified with revolvers a few times a year now writes the pistol standard that the rest of American law enforcement quietly copies. If you are enjoying this breakdown, take 1 second to subscribe. It is free, and it tells us to keep making these. Now, back to it. One tier up from the everyday sidearm sit the SWAT teams, and this is the detail most people miss entirely. The FBI does not have a SWAT team. It has 56 of them, one in every field office, from Miami to Minneapolis to Anchorage. The agents on those teams are not full-time operators. They are volunteers who carry regular caseloads, then train on top of them, because when the Bureau serves its most dangerous arrest warrants, the people stacking up at the door are not soldiers. They are investigators with rifles, operating under police rules on American soil. The rifle in their hands is the M4 carbine, the same 5.56 platform American troops carry, configured for a very different battlefield. Short barrel, suppressor, red dot optic, weapon light. Not for valleys and ridgelines, for hallways, stairwells, and door frames measured in inches. Alongside it rides one of the oldest and most trusted tools in the American gun cabinet, the Remington 870 pump shotgun. In SWAT hands, it is less a weapon than a key. Loaded with breaching rounds, it takes a locked door off its hinges in a single motion. Loaded with less lethal munitions, it can end a standoff without ending a life, an option that matters enormously to an agency that has to answer for every single round in a courtroom. And on their vests, flashbangs, distraction devices built to blind and deafen a room for the 2 seconds it takes to fill it with agents. Speed, surprise, and overwhelming presence. The entire doctrine is engineered so that, on most nights, the shooting never has to start at all. And then there is the top tier. In 1983, with the Los Angeles Olympics approaching, the FBI confronted an uncomfortable gap in American security. If terrorists seized hostages on U.S. soil, the military's elite counter-terror units, Delta Force, SEAL Team 6, were legally barred from acting as police inside the country. Somebody had to be able to do what those units do, at their standard, under the rule of law, with a badge. The answer was the Hostage Rescue Team. Its motto is 2 words of Latin, servar vitas, to save lives, not to win battles, to save lives. That distinction is carved into everything the team does. Getting in is its own war. Selection runs for 2 brutal weeks and routinely washes out most of the experienced agents who attempt it. And the ones who survive begin years of training alongside the very military units they were built to mirror, exchanging techniques with the Army's and Navy's most elite formations. HRT operators jump, dive, fast rope, and assault ships at sea. There is no other law enforcement unit in America with that portfolio, which is exactly the point. There is not supposed to be. Their primary weapon is the Heckler & Koch 416, a piston-driven evolution of the American carbine, chambered in 5.56, run short and suppressed. It is the same family of rifle trusted by the most elite military units on the planet, and the reasoning is uncomplicated. The piston system keeps running dirty, wet, and hot. A team that exists for the worst hour in America cannot own a rifle that quits. But the weapon that tells you who HRT really is rode on their hips for 2 decades. While the rest of law enforcement moved to polymer and striker-fired simplicity, HRT carried something almost extinct, a hand-built, single-action 1911. A design more than a century old, remade by master armorers into a precision instrument firing the heavy .45 caliber round, each pistol individually fitted, tuned, and tested before it ever reached an operator. It was a statement as much as a sidearm. This is a unit that shoots enough and shoots well enough to be trusted with a gun that forgives absolutely nothing. In recent years, the team has moved with the times. Red dot-equipped Glocks now dominate the holsters. But the hand-built 1911 era remains one of the great signatures in the history of tactical units. And in the armory behind them sits this channel's favorite kind of historical footnote, the MP510. When the Bureau fell in love with 10mm power after Miami, it went to Heckler & Koch with a request no other customer on earth was making. Take the world's most famous submachine gun and rebuild it around our cartridge. The result was the MP510, straight magazine, heavier bolt, unmistakable silhouette, a bespoke weapon that existed essentially for one customer. A submachine gun built around a caliber that was invented by a memo for the agency that wrote the memo. Every tier so far fights up close. The last one watches from 400 meters away. HRT's sniper section is the quietest corner of the entire Bureau, and by a wide margin, its most precise. Their primary tool is a bolt-action rifle built around the legendary Remington 700 Action, hand-bedded into a precision chassis, custom-barreled, and tuned by the Bureau's own armorers until it prints groups smaller than a playing card at distances most shooters never attempt. On top sits a variable power optic, underneath a bipod, beside it in the equipment cage a semi-automatic 7.62 rifle for the moments that demand fast follow-up shots over absolute precision. But the hardware is only half the story. A military sniper looks through his scope at a battlefield. An FBI marksman looks through his at an American street, a porch, a parking lot, a window with a hostage behind it. Every round he fires will be examined by lawyers, replayed in courtrooms, and judged against the highest standard that exists in shooting. Not close enough. Perfect or nothing. That is why these rifles are built by hand, and why the men behind them may train for an entire career for a single moment that never comes, and must be ready for it anyway, every single day. And there is one more thing the scope does that the rifle never gets credit for. Long before any shot is even considered, the sniper section is the command post's eyes, perched high, invisible, narrating the scene below in calm, clipped detail. Who is at the window? Which door just opened? What the man on the porch is holding? Hour after hour, a sniper team's real output is not bullets, it is information, flowing down to negotiators and commanders who are trying to end the day with everyone alive. Each rifle is paired with a spotter, reading wind, distance, and human behavior. And between the two of them, the most important skill is not marksmanship at all. It is patience. The trigger is the last resort of a job that is overwhelmingly about watching, reporting, and waiting. So what does this arsenal actually say? Look at the pattern one more time. A duty pistol born from a 4-minute gunfight in 1986. An entire caliber invented by a memo. A shotgun used as a key. A hostage rescue unit that carries hand-built pistols and military rifles under a Latin motto about saving lives. The FBI's guns are not trophies, and they are not statements of force. They are case files. Every single one of them is the closing chapter of an investigation into something that once went wrong, studied, documented, and answered in steel. And that may be the most FBI thing about them. This is, before anything else, an agency of investigators. Even its weapons are conclusions drawn from evidence. If you made it all the way here, you already know the drill. Subscribe for the next breakdown and tell us down in the comments which detail surprised you most. The caliber invented by a memo, or the hand-built 1911s at Quantico. We will see you on the next one.